So, would you like to hear a sermon, or would you rather I told you a story?
Sermon.
Start with a story. Finish.
I like-
I knew the answer you wanted.
I like telling stories. You know, when your parents tell you a story, sometimes, have you noticed, they'll tell you the same story over and over again? Right? Would you rather hear an old story or a new story that you haven't heard before? New story? Okay, I'll tell you a new story then. So, in order to do that, I have to figure out which old stories, if you've heard it before. So, how many people, the young people back there, how many of you know what happened on this day 21 years ago? Can you tell me? You know, right? What happened? What's your name? In the purple shirt?
George.
George?
Yeah.
Do you know what happened this day 21 years ago? Yeah.
Basically, there were like attacks on buildings, like the World Trade Center, especially as like no attack.
I'm sorry, say it again. The attacks on the World Trade Center, and what else?
And yeah, like there was an airplane and it crashed into the towers.
That's right. That's right. Did you ever hear about that, Serena? Yeah. You heard about that, right? Did they only crash into the Twin Towers, or did they crash into anything else? What's your name?
Ken.
Is this your brother right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't laugh at him. He's doing a great job. Tell me, Ken, what was the other building that they crashed into? The Pentagon. And what's your name?
Josh.
Josh. Oh, I like that name. Was there another plane that crashed somewhere else, or was it just the Pentagon and the World Trade Center?
What I know,
Yeah.
I only knew about the Pentagon and World Trade Center. I don't know about any others. But
Yeah, did you know about the other plane? Most people don't know about the other plane. There was one more plane. And that plane was supposed to crash into the Capitol building. You know, that's the most important building, right, in the American government. But the people on the plane heard about it because they had their cell phones. They heard that the World Trade Center got attacked. They heard that the Pentagon got attacked. So do you know what happened? The guys in the back of the plane said, no way we're going to allow this to crash into the Capitol building. So they got up and they rushed, you know, where the pilot was, and they gave their lives to protect the Capitol. They caused the plane to crash, and it crashed where? In Pennsylvania, right? Isn't that amazing? You didn't hear, see, that's the most important one. That's the most important one. The one where people sacrifice their lives to save other people. That's amazing to think about that. And before they did it, they called their wives and their daughters on the phone, and you know what they said? I love you. I love you. I love you. Over and over again. That was the last message. What an amazing story. One of my favorite sayings of Jesus is he said, no greater love has any man than he that lays down his life for his friends. Wow, what a powerful statement. And of course we know Jesus actually did that, right? He was willing to give his life, sacrifice his life. So it's a really powerful story, the story of that plane in Philadelphia. And have you ever heard the expression, let's roll? Have you guys heard that? Let's roll? It comes from that plane. Because when the guys got up and said, okay, we're going to go, you know, attack the pilot and stop them from crashing, they stood, they said, let's roll. That's where that saying comes from that plane. So anyway, it's an amazing story. You can, I won't take up too much more time about that, but you can look it up.
There's a movie.
Oh, there's a movie about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody remember the name of the movie?
It's the name of the number of the plane, which I...
Flight something?
Yes.
Yeah, so anyway, they can get on their smartphones and in 2 minutes find out if you want to know more about that story. But why do you think those guys crashed into the World Trade Center? You have any idea? This is George, Josh, and
Ken.
Ken. Ken, you're the oldest?
Yeah.
All right. Since you're the oldest, I'll give you the opportunity to say, what do you think? I mean, you don't have to be right or wrong. Just why do you think they did that?
They had resentment against the Western world.
Ooh, wow, you nailed it. Wait, you nailed it. And do you have any idea why they? He said because they had resentment against the Western world. That's absolutely true. Do you have any idea why? It's hard to say, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of conflict before that.
A lot of conflict before that. George, do you have any idea why they hated America so much?
Maybe like the influences.
The influences. You're absolutely right. You guys, 10 points for Gryffindor. That's amazing. You guys did really well. Josh, did you want to add anything?
No.
No? Serena? No? Yeah, they had resentment towards the West, and a lot of it had to do with the influence that the West had on their society. And the fact of the matter is, which culture is more modest and more reserved and more traditional, especially regarding like marriage and family and sexuality? Which one is more modest and reserved, the Muslim world or America? What do you think?
Probably Muslim.
Actually, it's the Muslim world. The Muslim world is more modest. The women, are more modest. Marriage is really highly valued. Family is really highly valued. And of course, we value those things, but does American culture in general reflect those values?
Not really.
Not really. So the Muslim world feels threatened by that. So that's part of it. That's no justification, but it's important for us to try to understand where people are coming from, right? So there's a word in the Islamic tradition called, it starts with a J, that has to do with fighting your enemies. Does anybody know what word that is?
Jihad.
Jihad. Have you guys ever heard that word? Jihad? Yeah, jihad. A jihadist is somebody that's fighting. So the Muslims that attacked the World Trade Center, they interpreted jihad as meaning go fight and kill your enemies. But actually, might be surprised to hear that that's not the definition of jihad in Islam. Did you know that? I'll explain what the definition of jihad is in Islam by explaining because we just sang about it. Listen to this. Oh, may your soldiers, faithful, true, and bold, fight as the saints who nobly fought of old, and win with them the victor's crown of gold. And when the fight is fierce, the warfare long. Now, doesn't that sound like war and fighting and battle? It does, right? That we just sang that in the song for all the saints. But are we talking about going and fighting somebody in a war? Are we?
No.
What do you think it's talking about? What do you think it's that we're fighting?
It's a battle against evil.
The battle against evil. And where does evil originate?
Inside us.
Inside of us. Jesus said it's not that which goes into the mouth that causes a man to become sinful. It's what comes out of the mouth, because what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart. And that's where lies and jealousy and all of those things. So the battle that the Christians are talking about is the battle against yourself, against those parts of yourself that can cause harm to others. Does that make sense? It's a spiritual battle, isn't it? That's what jihad means. Jihad in Islam is the battle against those parts of yourself that could cause harm to other people. That's what true jihad is. It has nothing to do with flying into the World Trade Centers. Have Christians sometimes misunderstood this concept and gone to war against people because they thought that was God's will?
You mean like the Crusades?
Like the Crusades? Yeah. So we have to realize that our own culture and our own history contains the same mistake that the people who flew into the World Trade Center has. And if we understand that, then we can have a more understanding and forgiving heart. Okay, so that's all I want to say about that. But that's really the true meaning of jihad. It means to fight against, it's an internal spiritual battle. It's not fighting with weapons. Okay. All right, so now, when the World Trade Center happened and, the planes crashed and we went to war, against an organization called Al-Qaeda, at that time, many of us in America were very nervous, including myself. Because I don't know if you know that, but even here in North Carolina, there was a terrorist sympathizer who drove his car into a bunch of students at UNC Chapel Hill. Do you remember that? Yeah, right in Chapel Hill. There was a guy who drove his truck at the student union and, knocked over, he didn't kill anybody, but he knocked over a couple of students. So this kind of stuff was going on. There was where Willow Springs, North Carolina is, down by Fuquay? There was a house down there that was full of a bunch of jihadists. And they found all these weapons in there. Yeah. So we're reading about these things in the news, and we're getting a little nervous. So in prayer, God was telling me, you have to become friends with Muslims. You have to reach out to Muslims in your neighborhood and become friends. I was getting this message, from prayer more than once. And right at that time, John called me up and said, Ron, there's going to be a vigil for victims of terrorism, and I'd like to invite you to come. And so I figured it was probably, a bunch of Christians or something like that, So I went to it, and the people who organized this vigil for the victims of terrorism were Muslims. And they actually risked their lives to put this program on. Because the really mean, violent Muslims, they will attack and kill the people who want to make peace with the West. I'm not kidding. So I was so moved. Like the leader of one of the mosques in my neighborhood was there, and the other people. So I became friends with the leader of the mosque in Cary. But then, very interesting thing happened. A Muslim family moved in on my street. Okay, just a few doors down. Muslim family. And at the time, I wanted to interact with them, but I never saw them. And sometimes they would go away for a long time. And I thought, oh, I want to meet these people. And then my imagination started going, oh, what if they're terrorists? What if they have weapons in that house? Because I never see these people. And you understand where my head was going? Not to a good place. So I actually talked to... what's the name of what's their names? Who used to be the pastor, the young fella? Angelucci.
Yeah, Josh Angelucci.
All right, Josh Angelucci, his mom worked extensively in Muslim countries. So I said, how can I meet these people and make friends with them? She said, you can't. You can't go to the house and knock on the door. Because if the wife answers, it creates a problem because you're a man and they're very, very modest and they're very protective. So I'm like racking my brains. I talked to Connie, maybe you could go. And we're trying to figure out how to meet them. So then a miracle happened. It's true. This is a true story. I wanted to meet them, but I didn't know how. So we are walking a dog. We're walking a dog on the 4th of July. Which, right, at night. It's like 9:30, 10 o'clock. We're walking the dog. And we got right by their house, and somebody set off fireworks, and the dog went crazy. And he ran so hard, he pulled the leash, and he disappeared into the night. And he wound up, tangled up in his leash in their backyard. So at 10 o'clock at night, I've got my little flashlight on, I'm in their backyard trying to find this dog. And I finally find the dog right up against their back door. So I get the dog, and I'm thinking they must think like there's a burglar out there in their backyard. So I went around and a light was on. I knocked on the door to explain what was going on, but nobody answered. Then the next day, I went to the house and knocked on the door. Maybe you came with me. I can't remember, because I felt like I had to tell them what happened. And the woman opened the door, and she was like, "Come on in." And she's wearing the hijab. And to make a long story short, these people were the nicest people in the world. It was a mom and a dad and 3 little kids. And she was pregnant. Her belly was out to here. And we became, I'm making a long story short, we became really good friends. They invited us over for dinner. And then we invited them over for dinner. And I was playing Ticket to Ride with their kids, and I even bought them a copy of Ticket to Ride. I mean, I gave them Hungry Hungry Hippos, and so we became very close. It was almost like their kids were like our grandkids. But here's the deepest thing. So anyway, the point is, the fear went away and turned to love. So that's the miracle of the changing of our hearts. But then an even deeper miracle happened. As I mentioned, the wife was pregnant. And she was very close to giving birth. She went into labor. She had contractions. She went to the hospital, and then when the baby was born, it died. It died during labor because the placenta tore away from and it got oxygen starved, and it died. So the baby was born dead, stillborn. Now, they're from Morocco, and their family is in Morocco. Her mom and dad were in Morocco. You know who she called after she lost the baby? She called Connie from the hospital. I lost the baby, and told the whole story. And she's pouring her heart out to Connie. Now, here's, going from being enemies to being loving each other as one family. So while she's on the phone, I said to Connie, ask her if she would like us to come visit her in the hospital. And she asked, and she said, yes, that would be lovely. So I'm choking up just thinking about this. So we went to the hospital and saw her, and Connie was close to her in the bed. And she's in the bed recovering from having lost this baby and lost a lot of blood, right? And she reaches out her hand and takes Connie's hand and is holding Connie's hand. They're holding hands like this is my mom. What an amazing, talk about restoration, talk about reconciliation. To go from, the Franciscans, I talked about Franciscan mysticism, they have a song that says, when I looked into the eyes of my enemy, I saw my brother. Like that. So, the point I want to make is Muslim people they're just normal people like us. They want the same things we want. They want to have a nice life for their children. These two work hard. She's a nurse at Wake Medical Center, and he's a manager of a food line. They're just typical average people, okay? And all they want is, to raise their family, to become good people, and you get the picture, right? And that's what most Muslim people are like. It's just there are these extremist groups. And again, like John invited me, these Muslims risk their lives to say, no, what they're doing is wrong. We don't buy into this. Islam is a religion of peace. That's why we greet each other by saying salam. What does salam mean? Salam alaikum means peace be with you. It's like shalom in Israel. It means peace be with you. And this is what we want to. Also, there's another branch of Islam called Sufism, the Sufi path, which is it's a very, very beautiful mystical path. And I want to end by just making one quote. This is from the Islamic holy book. We know there's one called Quran, right? There's another one called Hadith, Hadith, Hadith. And in this book, God says, If you come to me the width of a hand, I will come to you the length of my arm. If you come to me this much, I will come to you this much. And if you come to me walking, I will go to you running. Think about the heart of that scripture. It's very similar to the story of the prodigal son, where the father sees the son coming home at a distance, and it says that he ran to his son and kissed him. So this is the heart of God, that God is actually longing for a relationship with us more than we're making effort to make a relationship with him. And that same teaching is in Islam. It's in the Islamic holy book. So we have to really try to see what are the good aspects of all the world religions that we have in common with. And, Father Moon wanted us to be the bridge, wanted us to be the ones that can bring everyone together in peace, love, and harmony as all families, brothers and sisters of the same family under a heavenly parent. Make sense?
Amen.
Any questions? Well, great. I hope you enjoyed the story about the dog and the fireworks. 'Cause isn't it an amazing thing? I mean, God used the dog so that we could meet the family. Beautiful. Thank you, and God bless you. And I'll have somebody else say the prayer.